So welcome to the June 5th, 2025 Journal of Expressive Writing open mic and featured author. Tonight, I'm so thrilled to, to be able to present a reading with my friend, author Maureen Murdock, who will be reading from one of her many books tonight. Then we'll have a little bit of a Q&A. Then we're going to go into our really dynamic and fantastic open mic. Now, I want to say a couple things about the open mic and the way we do it here. You have 3 minutes, and I do time your readings because we really want to end the evening on time. And so if you go over your 3 minutes, I'll give you a little bit of time, but then I may have to interrupt you and say, I'm sorry, we're out of time. Please don't take it personally. Just come back next time and don't worry about it. It's helpful if you time your reading in advance. People come and read in poetry, prose, memoir, whatever you want to read from for 3 minutes in our group. You're welcome to sign up as many times a year as you want. We're always happy to have you. And I will be also posting links to Maureen's amazing library of published books, so that if you are not familiar with her books, you want to be, and you will be by the end of the night. So I'll put some live links. We hope you will consider purchasing at least one of Maureen's books because they're really incredible books. And some of them have been in print, like The Heroine's Journey, for it's decades, right?
Yeah.
How many?
30, 35 years.
Yeah, it's been in print that long. All right. So it's been updated. So, I mean, we've got some really amazing things to look at tonight. I'm just so glad that Maureen agreed to come. And let's see, we're gonna, so take a look at the open mic. Let me know if you have an issue with it. And if you have a question about it. And I know what I wanted to say. We are going to break for the summer. So we'll be back in September after tonight, and we'll be programming again September through June for next year. But we will be taking our short little break of July and August, and we can't wait to be back because we really miss you when we're gone for the summer. Now, let me see. I'm going to go ahead and introduce Maureen. Well, Maureen Murdock, PhD, has always been interested in mythology and memoir, so she teaches and writes books on both topics. Her book, The Heroine's Journey, Woman's Quest for Wholeness, which explores the rich territory of the feminine psyche, was translated into a dozen languages, and she has led workshops on the topic for women throughout the US and Europe. Maureen was chair and core faculty of the MA Counseling Psychology program at Pacifica Graduate Institute, and she teaches memoir writing for the International Women's Writing Guild. Her other books include Father's Daughters, Breaking the Ties That Bind, Unreliable Truth on Memory and Memoir and Memory, Spinning Inward, Using Guided Imagery with Children for Learning, Creativity and Relaxation, and The Heroine's Journey, Women's Quest for Wholeness. Do you see what I mean about how many wonderful books she has? I'll put her website into that room when I have a chance as well. Now, I asked Maureen to come and talk mostly tonight about myth-making, self-discovery, and the timeless art of memoir. And that's the book link I put already into the chat. I'll put the next ones in. So myth-making, self-discovery, and the timeless art of memoir is by Maureen Murdock. She invites readers to explore your personal story within the rich tapestry of human experience by examining the craft of memoir alongside fresh writing advice and prompts. Maureen looks at thematic connections between ancient myths and contemporary memoirs to probe questions like, what is my journey? Where is home? Her background as a Jungian psychotherapist enriches her teaching, urging us to dig deep to identify our own universal archetypes. Writers who feel stuck or unworthy of writing about themselves will find thought-provoking inspiration and validation in this book, while those simply looking to use writing as a tool for self-exploration will examine their patterns and stories to reveal your true inner self. And all of you will be left with a deeper understanding of the rich scope of the memoir genre by exploring contemporary favorites in her book, like Terry Tempest Williams' Refuge, Joan Didion's The Year of Magical Thinking, and David Carr's The Night of the Gun. From a mythological perspective, like myth, memoir reveals a unity to human experience that ultimately we all share, similar hopes, dreams, and desires, as well as fears, losses, and heartbreaks. Memoir helps writers understand the trajectory of their lives and helps readers better grasp our own place with the human experience. Welcome, Maureen. Thank you for being here. We're delighted. We would love to have you read from Myth and Memory right now.
Yeah. Thanks, Kelly, for the introduction. That was a mouthful.
It was a mouthful, a delightful one. Okay, it's all yours now, Maureen.
Okay, so I'm going to read from the introduction to Myth Making, which came out a year ago, March, and it's a culmination of about 30 years of teaching memoir, and then starting to look at memoir through the lens of myth. So here we go. Myths and folk tales are the oldest stories we have. Myths may be stories about gods and goddesses, heroes and heroines, origins and mores lived by the ancestors and handed down to us. But there's also a recurring enactment of the narrative pattern embedded in the story. The once upon a time is also now a living event. It is this twofold aspect of then and now that fulfills the timeless collective essence of myth and proves essential to the writing of memoir. As memoirists bring forward events of the past and reenact them, giving them form and significance in writing. We all need to tell our story and understand our story. We all need to understand our passage from birth to life and then to death. We need for our life to signify, to touch the eternal, to understand the mysterious, to find out who we are. We are compelled to listen to the stories of others because we want to see ourselves reflected in them. Grappling with uncertainty and ambiguity in our own lives, we seek direction in the memoirs of others. Those of us who write memoir write it to figure out the meaning of events in our lives. Making meaning is key to the writing of memoir. Otherwise, we could write a short story, a travelogue, a political essay, flash fiction. We mine our memories and emotions to make sense of the disparate episodes in our lives, tracing the evolution of several different selves in the process. Memoir writing has the magic of not just telling a story about the individual who writes the memory, but also touching some aspect of the universal. In that way, memoir has the power to be healing for both the writer and the reader. Memoirists are our contemporary myth makers. Like myth, memoir presupposes there's a certain unity to human experience, that we all share similar hopes, dreams, and desires. When we tell the story of how and where we grew up, who our parents were, how the significant people in our lives influenced us, what challenges and obstacles we face. We are locating ourselves within an ancient human tradition of storytelling and meaning making. Memoirs help us find meaning in our lives by showing us how we fit into a larger mythic theme. Memoirs address the domains of myth, which Joseph Campbell delineated, which are: who am I? Who are my people? What is my journey? And what is my purpose? Memoir often gets confused with autobiography and biography. Memoir, as you know, is not a linear autobiographical account of a fully lived life, like Katharine Graham's personal history about the Washington Post, but rather it is a selected aspect of the writer's life written from his or her point of view. Rather than simply recounting an incident or memory, the memoirist both tells the story and tries to make meaning out of it. When you recognize that certain episodes in your life reflect a particular mythic pattern, like the stages of the hero heroine's journey, or the parent child relationship, or childhood innocence, or the fall from grace, or the descent to the underworld, or death, or betrayal, or the eternal return from life, death, and rebirth. You will appreciate your experience on a larger mythic scale, and you'll realize you're part of a shared global community. For example, in ancient literature, Odysseus's journey across the seas was invented or appropriated to serve as a Greek expression of heroism. In the 21st century cultural lexicon of film, the journey of the orphan Rey in Star Wars, The Force Awakens, was invented to serve as a Western ideal of heroism. Both heroes represent something of our own psychological journey. The myth of Odysseus is passed on from generation to generation by acculturation, but the hero archetype is passed on through constantly repeated experiences of human existence. So when you reflect upon a myth, think about how the action or plot reflects something in your own life, your own story. For example, how have you been loved, like Psyche and Eros? The structure of the myth of Psyche and Eros involves separation, a loss of innocence, trials, failure, and despair. But at the end, Psyche faces her humanity and gains a more mature understanding of love. The first love of many young people reflects at least some elements of this structure. It is difficult to see your own story while you're living it, but if a person looks at a particular mythic pattern for direction, it not only helps them understand their path, but also gives them the opportunity to see themselves in relation to others and to their place in the world. It illuminates why certain challenges occur. It gives us comfort to know that others have experienced what we have lived. So, what is the story or the narrative that just walked into the room with you? What is the story you tell about yourself, your family, your culture, and what meaning do you make from the very story that you tell? The story you tell becomes the story you live. I suspect that one of the reasons memoir is so popular today is because many memoirs address one or more of the domains of myth. Certainly, the first domain, who am I, or how did I come about, is at the core of every memoir. In her memoir, Inheritance, a memoir of genealogy, paternity, and love, Dani Shapiro explores the crisis of identity she experienced when she found out through a DNA test at age 54 that her father was not actually her birth father. If the father she grew up with is not her actual father, Shapiro wonders, who is she? She is afraid that she has become unknowable, not only to herself, but also to others. She writes, my body wasn't the body I had believed it to be for 54 years. My face wasn't my face. If my body wasn't my body and my face wasn't my face, who was I? Her memoir becomes her origin myth or her creation story. When the energies present in the older mythical tales are captured in newer contemporary stories, modern readers can still experience an archetypally lived event. We access the archetypal through the personal. For example, in The Year of Magical Thinking, Joan Didion describes waiting in their apartment for her husband, John Donne, to return from the dead after his sudden heart attack. Her inability to accept the finality of his death recalls the Greek Orpheus's vain attempt to reverse the death of his beloved Eurydice and bring her back from Hades. If she could, Didion too would have made the journey to the underworld to plead to Hades to reclaim John. Didion writes about her need to spend the night of her husband's death alone. She writes, of course I knew John was dead. Of course I had already delivered the definitive news to his brother and to my brother and to Quintana's husband. The New York Times knew, the Los Angeles Times knew, yet I was myself in no way prepared to accept this news as final. There was on a level on which I believed that what had happened remained reversible. I needed to be alone so he could come back. The psychologist Carl Jung believed that every society has specific stories that express archetypal themes, such as the death of a loved one. But in each society, the stories emerge from manifestations of already mythic material. The yearning for a figure to embody the archetype remains. The persona changes. While Eurydice embodies the ancient archetype of the dead spouse, Didion's husband, John, embodies the current persona. The best-selling author, Cheryl Strayed, whose chosen surname even reflects one aspect of her self-invention, wrote Wild, not only to document her 1,100-mile solo trek along the Pacific Crest Trail, but also to come to terms with the death of her mother. Her memoir resonated with readers around the world because her story was archetypal, like Persephone, who was abducted from her mother Demeter into the underworld by Hades. The loss of Cheryl's mother and the pain of separation plunged her into a deep descent. 4 years later, her journey from the Mojave Desert through California and Oregon to Washington ultimately healed her. So all stories consist of a few common structural elements found universally in myths, fairy tales, dreams, and movies. Think about each character in a dream or a myth as an aspect of yourself. Characters such as the young hero, the wise old man, the wise old woman, or the wicked witch are the same figures who appear in your dreams and fantasies. That's why myths and most stories have a ring of psychological truth to them. The universal power of myth is that they deal with universal questions. Memoir writing is healing because it provides the potential for you to experience and transform emotions attached to past wounds that were never integrated before. In the process of writing about the past, you have the opportunity not only to recover your past, but to experience a sense of reunion and release. So my question to you is, what matters at this point in your life? What memory do you want to explore, and what will you make of it? Write the story your soul wants to write. And that's it for now.
Thank you so much, Maureen. Okay, that was super stimulating. I know because I just sense, I mean, I know how really sort of like I was feeling the sparks. I know others here are feeling the sparks. We got a lot of writers in the room, and um, I want to chat with you for a few minutes. I really appreciated that reading. We got a lot of writers in here, and I'm getting a couple messages in the chat room about, oh my God, I can't wait to sink into this. So I want to ask, and please respond in the chat room. Are you feeling sparks? Some of you might be working on memoirs, and I know that a couple people mentioned in the chat that they were while you were reading, Maureen, and I'm curious if other people are feeling a spark. So Deborah said feeling validated.
Mm.
Okay, tell us what you mean by that, Deborah. Validated, can you give us another sentence about that? What about what Maureen is saying?
Could speak.
Okay, yes, you could also unmute and speak. Maureen says, speak. Deborah, where are you?
Hi,
Oh, there you are. Thanks.
and I'm the one in Western Canada. I say that I feel validated because I feel as if I'm on the right path. You and it's so beautiful to hear a writer in their own words. So thank you very much for that. Um,
Tell,
Yeah,
tell us what you mean on the right path.
How, what
that what
about
I
that?
bel
Yeah.
that I'm letting my soul guide my words.
Yeah,
It's
good.
always guided my actions,
Mhm.
but I'm allowing it to guide my words. And I feel free when I do that. And I feel unedited when I do that. And I feel truthful when I do that.
Mhm.
And so I feel validated because I've been feeling that, but you said it so succinctly and in such clear language that I it truly spoke to me. And I thank you for that very
Yeah,
much.
you're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Deborah. I think it's a good idea. I want other people who have a question or comment for Maureen to go ahead and maybe raise your hand or unmute. Kaz, you're feeling sparks flying. And I do see your hand, John. So let me just finish my question to Kaz and then I'll get to you, John. Kaz, sparks flying. Do you want to say anything about that? Could you?
I'm inspired. I have been toying around with different ways to enter into how I'd like to write my memoirs. And Maureen, I've always loved your classes at IWWG, and I am so happy that you're here. But your words just have me more focused on a direction I'm going to become more serious with. I've been in a long pause, a creative pause, not a block, just stirring the pot. And perfect. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, one thing to do when you've been in a pause and you're coming back from a pause is to make a commitment to your writer that you're going to sit down at a particular time of day, maybe every week, that same day, or, whatever time you can carve out, but really make a commitment to your writer and tell her you're going to show up.
So true. And actually, I have begun again a rhythm with my writer,
Oh, good.
and it's nice. It's
You are
magical,
showing up. You're showing up.
energetic.
Yeah.
Great.
Thanks, Maureen. Thank you, Kelly.
Yes, thanks.
Yes. Thank you, Kaz. John, what
Okay.
would you like to say?
I have a problem with writing a memoir, which why I haven't done it, because my life has been overwhelming, kind of to me. I've Can you write a memoir in like multiple books?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, like I read, a memoir is just taking a particular slice of your life. It's
Oh,
not an autobiography, which is from birth to when you're writing it. So
uh,
just pick a slice of life to basically investigate.
okay. I know exactly where I'm going now.
Oh, good, good.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Deborah, I so agree with your suggestion for John of the Copenhagen trilogy. That's amazing reading. And Karen Harvey says, my mode of self-exploration always becomes poetry. Maureen, do you think poetry or prose is more effective?
In memoir,
Yeah.
I don't think one is more effective than the other. And some memoirists use both prose and poetry, so I think they can parallel each other.
Thank you.
Lisa St. John is giving you a big endorsement. I finished, hopefully, the final draft of my memoir. This is due in large part to Maureen's books and the in-person workshops I have attended. There's a common denominator of truth that Maureen reveals.
Whoa, That's pretty
And
hot, Lisa.
yeah, that's great. By the way, you can learn more about Maureen and her workshops. I'll put her I've put it in her website in the chat, and I'll put it in there again. Maureen, so other questions. Thank you so much, Lisa. So Lisa just posted Maureen's website. Thanks. So
Thank-
there are other people who want to have a unique opportunity to ask Maureen Murdock a question or tell her something appropriate that you've always wanted to tell her. Feel free, raise your hand or get my notice, okay? Because I'm going to go ahead and ask her a question until I see another one. But I am happy to let you unmute and ask her a question or make a comment.
Can I make a comment?
Sure, yeah.
This is about my website. Out here, we recently had a weekend conference on the goddess. And so part of that is on my website. Those of you who are interested in the sacred feminine, you might want to take a look at it.
Sacred feminine.
It's the conference is called The Goddess.
Okay. Okay, great. So you can go to Maureen's website for that. I wanted to, something you said about Cheryl Strayed and self-invention and how her name strayed is accidentally connected to the theme.
It's
Not
not
accidentally, intentionally. This is part of her journey. Yeah. So
right.
we talk about that a little bit more, this idea of self-invention in memoir. And maybe it's a synchronicity or, tell me what you think about that. How do you frame the idea that her name is Strayed? And go ahead.
She created that name because that's how she felt after her mother died. She just felt completely abandoned and alone. I wouldn't say that her journey was self-invented. I mean, she took over 18 months to take that journey up the Pacific Crest Trail. But I think it was brilliant that she changed her name to Cheryl Strayed because that's how she felt.
Yes. And so that is this idea of self-invention or mythologizing the self in the sense that she's saying the thematic thing I'm looking at here is how I was really off the path, how I strayed from the predictable path and how that became kind of a focusing principle of the memoir.
Right, but it's also very much about the mother-daughter relationship. So that's why I was comparing it to the Demeter Persephone myth, where Persephone is taken into the underworld and eventually Demeter gets her back. And in a sense, Strayed was like Persephone, who went into the underworld after her mother died with drug use and her divorce. And she walked her way back to her healing
Mm-hmm.
um, in, in taking the hike as well as writing about it. And she wrote about that, I think, 20 years after the hike. So
Yeah.
that's another thing about memoir is, people think, okay, I had this experience and I have to write about it right away. I think it has to settle for a while until we really know what we can make out of a particular event.
Beautifully said. And I'm thinking of you, John, Swainston here, you were asking about, I have so many really things. How do I choose which piece of slice of life? So if I have many stories, like John says, he's had a very eventful, perhaps complicated life. We don't know all the details, but do you have any thoughts on that, Maureen, about how someone like John then chooses where to begin, which is the first memoir I'm going to write?
It's what you're called to write. I mean, it won't let go of you if it wants to be written about. So it's the one that keeps repeating in your head, the one you dream about, or not. Maybe you just start with a prompt, like my book has prompts at the end of each chapter. And one prompt that people find helpful is, what is home?
Mm.
It's a big, big question. Or what is home to me? You know, just to start the writing practice. So you have to start somewhere and follow it. So I always tell people, follow the image or follow the memory or follow the dream. See where it takes you, and get rid of a agenda. Agenda kills memoir.
Okay, we're going to have to ask you to unpack that a tiny bit because I think it sounds really significant. Agenda kills memoir. I think our listeners want to hear a little bit about what you mean by agenda kills memoir.
Okay, a lot of people go into writing about memoir because they have this whole story in their head. They want to get it down and they want other people to read it. But memoir doesn't work that way. As you're writing, you're starting to get to know yourself at a much deeper level. And you're starting to understand the meaning of a particular episode or, you know, whatever happened at the time. But if you go into it thinking, I know exactly what I'm going to write, you lose the depth of the process. So that's, you know, maybe what I said, agenda kills memoir, was a little harsh, but I do feel like that's what I see with my students. If they come in and they're absolutely certain about what they're going to write about, it might come out to be a great autobiography, but they might not have found the meaning in the event.
Mhm. Okay. Finding the meaning in the event is the most important thing in
Yeah.
your
I-
framework.
I think that, yes. And that's why I said memoirists are our contemporary myth makers.
I'm gonna take
because
somebody up.
You're, you're,
Mm-mm.
you're looking
Thank you.
for the meaning in the episode. And you won't know that until after you've written it.
Is that wonderful? Now, another question Deborah Dolan is asking, is the mother story the root of everything in our lives? Just a little question like that.
That's a PhD paper.
Yeah.
Boy, I don't know. I would say the parent story is the root of everything. I wrote Father's Daughters, Breaking the Ties That Bind, because certain women who are, quote, father's daughters, who idealize or identify with the father, that's their stories. So I would say that would be the root of everything in their lives. So the mother doesn't get blamed for everything.
Okay, I also want you, I'm going to put the father, I'm going to see if I can put that right now again into the father's daughters, breaking the ties that bind. I'm going to copy that for
While
the,
you're doing that, let me ask Deborah what you meant.
okay. Oh,
Oh, thank you, Maureen. I just find that in my life, in my circle of friends, and through my writing life, or just the living of my life, that most of the stories related to memoir have very strong themes of mother. And I don't know if that's simply because I read a lot of women's memoir. I really like the perspective that you put on about the parent the so I think the mother's story is something that I try to write about not wanting to be the mother story. And I think that's one of the reasons I chose to be childless. And I've looked at that in my own writing, my own approach to life. And
Mhm.
so my question wasn't really a universal. I guess it was much more of a personal piece as I explore it, that deep, that influence on our lives.
I think it's really,
Seeking the approval, seeking the understanding, seeking the forgiveness, wanting the apology, um,
Mhm.
et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, that's universal. We all want the apology from the
The
mother.
and balance it with the compassion we have because their lives were difficult. Our
Yeah,
grandmother's lives, our mother's lives. I'm in my late 60s. They were difficult, difficult lives with few choices. And again, it's that whole concept of, are we living the unlived lives, the jealousy, the competition,
yeah.
them offering everything to us and us taking it and putting our
And
backs to them, all that
right,
stuff.
discarding them. Yeah,
Yes.
well, it sounds like you've got the whole the whole arena covered in all of the things that you're mentioning, particularly the cultural piece, and that needs to be woven into the memoir so that memoirs do have to reflect the culture of the event, the historical
I
also, which you just mentioned in terms of your age and your grandmother and your mother.
I also, if I may, if I like what you talk about in terms of the event. And my understanding always has been of memoir is that defining, exploring the event that everything else stemmed from in your life. Let's say it's I'm just saying, like parents as alcoholic, or a divorce, or a, a, um, a sibling who died by suicide. Whatever it may be, that is central theme in your own life, and how that's how I've always thought about memoir. And I'm wondering if that's what you mean by event.
I'd say it's a way in.
Mm, okay.
Yeah.
The event is a way in.
Yeah, a way into starting. But I think for most of us writing memoir, you'll find that that's not really the story that wants to be told, but it
Mm.
is the way in.
That's That's beautiful.
Thank
I'm
you for
sure
that.
there's more about that in your book. Thank you so much, Deborah. I want to give Claire Conan a chance. She's raised her hand. Going to give Claire a chance to ask the final question of the evening, if you would like to, and you can go ahead and unmute.
Thank you so much. This has been really, really meaningful. I'm wondering if you can speak to kind of the experience of vulnerability that comes with sharing your work. And I certainly personally have this like deep ambivalence where I've put work out into the world and have simultaneously felt like this dream come true. It's like, oh, I'm doing what I'm doing what I'm called to do. And at the same time, this feeling of real exposure and anxiety. And I think I'm still continuing to sort of work with that in myself and trying to be really intentional around, when I submit something for publication, how I sort of kind of prepare myself, taking things not personally. And yeah, I'm just wondering if you could speak to that in your own experience or people you've worked with.
Yeah, it's a big, big topic, especially for women. Women have more difficulty with that usually than men in terms of exposing their vulnerability. I always say to students, there's a difference between writing and publishing. Um, publishing, we're usually afraid of what our family is going to say, what our friends are going to say, and they criticize us rather than criticizing the writing. But you're asking kind of two things: how to deal with rejection. With Unreliable Truth, I had 23 rejections before I found a publisher. And I wrote a memoir called, boy, I can never remember the title. Anyway, that one I had 26 rejections, and you just have to send it out again and send it out again and send it out again. And I know that's an answer you don't want to hear, but it's the truth. And in terms of the vulnerability, are you in a writing or a critique group?
Kind of. No, I don't have a regular group.
Okay, I think that's really important, to have a group to talk about the vulnerability and for everyone to support each other to get it out there. But women have experienced so much silencing that it takes real strength to say, I have value and I'm going to get my value out there. And I think it's getting a little bit easier since '94 when Liars Club came out. I mean, she was one of the first women memoirists that kind of broke the taboo. So don't give up, Claire. Just keep going.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Great question. Thank you so much, Claire. And thank you, Maureen. This has been incredibly deep and inspirational, lots of sparks flying. And I love that people have had a chance to talk to you and you've been willing to answer their questions. I do want to mention, because I am not sure if you will be with us entirely to the end, but I do want to mention, because you and myself and Myra Shapiro are here, that we will be at the International Women's Writing Guild 4-day summer retreat near Albany, New York, live and in person this summer. And I'm going to be presenting a couple of different workshops on grandmother writing and photo-inspired creative writing. You're going to be presenting on memoir.
Myth and memoir.
Myth and memoir. And I know Myra Shapiro is going to be presenting in poetry, and it's going to be a really phenomenal. Thank you so much, Lisa. I couldn't get the link into the chat room. So Lisa St. John kindly has put the link to the event. If you want to know, work more, question more, have a chance to engage more with Maureen in person, there's tons of ways, but one way this summer would be to join our International Women's Writing Guild workshop. Do you want to say anything more about what you're going to present at the retreat this summer, Maureen?
You're putting me on the spot.
Okay, but you're going to be presenting in memoir, right?
Yes, yeah, and we'll have readings from published memoirists. There'll be prompts, so they'll be writing in class, and then they'll be reading in class. And I will talk about looking at memoir through the lens of myth.
Okay, excellent.
But I'm definitely going to be talking about the craft of memoir, because that's what people really need and want.
Right. So we have an annual conference with the International Women's Writing Guild that happens every summer. This one's going to be a little bit different. It's going to be more of a smaller, intimate group intensive, more in a retreat style than a conference style. So I'm just mentioning it in case anyone wants to follow the link that Lisa put in the chat room and learn more about it. So thank you, Maureen. We're going to move to the open mic now. I have put your links to your books multiple times into the chat room.
Thank you.
And also the link to your website is in there. So that's a great way to follow up and learn more about Maureen and her incredible scholarship and writing. And we thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for the invitation. This was great fun. I wish I could have seen everyone.
You can, we're gonna put that back on. I'm gonna remove our spotlights,
Okay,
which
thank
I
you.
did have on, and now you see everybody. And I'm also going to go ahead and stop the recording.